Most people think the secret to living longer is some fancy diet or expensive supplement. But after talking to 100 seniors who've lived past 80, I found out we've all been looking in the wrong place. So here's what happened. I spent the last 3 weeks going to retirement communities, senior centers, parks, basically anywhere I could find people who've been around for 8 decades or more. I had one simple question for each of them. What's your number one health tip? The one thing you think kept you going strong all these years? And I'm not going to lie, I expected to hear the usual stuff. Eat your vegetables, drink water, exercise every day. Sure, some people said those things, but what shocked me were the answers that kept coming up over and over again that nobody ever talks about. Things that don't show up in health magazines or doctor's offices. Real, practical wisdom from people who actually lived it. Now, before I get into the top answers, let me tell you why I even started this project. My grandmother turned 85 last year, and she's healthier than people half her age. She still gardens, takes walks every morning, barely takes any medication. Meanwhile, I see people in their 60s struggling with all kinds of health problems. So I got curious. What are the people who are thriving doing differently? I grabbed my notebook and just started asking. Some conversations were quick, just a few minutes. Others turned into hour-long talks where people shared stories from their entire lives. I took notes on everything, and when I got home and looked at all the responses, patterns started jumping out at me. Things I never would have guessed were that important. The first thing that came up, and this was mentioned by 43 out of 100 people, was staying social. Not exercise, not diet. Staying connected to other people. I talked to this woman named Margaret, who's 89. She told me she's part of 3 different groups, a book club, a walking group, and a card game that happens every Thursday. She said the weeks where she misses those meetings, she feels it. Not just mentally, but physically too. She gets more aches, sleeps worse, just doesn't feel right. Another guy, Robert, he's 82, he said the worst thing that happened to his health wasn't a disease or an injury, it was when his best friend moved away to live with his daughter in another state. He said within 6 months, his blood pressure went up, he gained weight, and he just felt tired all the time. It wasn't until he forced himself to join a community garden and made new friends there that things turned around. This kept coming up. People who had regular social activities, who saw friends and family consistently, who had people to talk to and laugh with, they were the ones who seemed the healthiest and happiest. The ones who lived alone and didn't have much social contact, even if they ate well and exercised, they seemed to struggle more. And science actually backs this up. There are studies showing that loneliness and social isolation can be as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It affects your immune system, increases inflammation, messes with your sleep, raises your risk of heart disease and dementia. But we don't talk about it like we talk about diet and exercise. The second big answer I heard, and this one surprised me even more, was having a purpose, something to wake up for every day. I met this man named Henry, who's 91 years old. He volunteers at a local library 3 days a week, helping people use the computers and find books. He told me that when he first retired at 65, he thought it would be great. No more work, just relaxation. But after about 6 months, he felt lost. He was sleeping too much, wasn't taking care of himself, felt like his brain was getting foggy. Then his daughter suggested he volunteer somewhere. He wasn't sure at first, but he tried it, and he said it changed everything. Having somewhere to be, people who counted on him, feeling useful again, it gave him energy he didn't know he still had. That was 26 years ago, and he's still going strong. A woman named Dorothy, she's 86, she paints. She didn't start until she was 70. She said she always wanted to try it, but never had time while working and raising kids. Now she paints almost every day and even sells some pieces at local art shows. She told me that on days when her arthritis is acting up or she's feeling down, the thought of getting to work on her current painting keeps her going. This came up in different forms. Some people volunteered. Some had hobbies they were passionate about. Some took care of grandkids regularly. Some were still working part-time at jobs they loved. But they all had something that gave their days meaning. They weren't just passing time. They had reasons to get up, get moving, and engage with life. There's actually research on this too. Studies show that people with a strong sense of purpose live longer and have lower rates of disability as they age. It affects everything from how well you sleep to how strong your immune system is. The third thing I heard a lot was movement, but not in the way you'd think. Only 12 people mentioned going to the gym or doing structured exercise, but almost everyone talked about just moving throughout the day. I talked to Linda, she's 83, and she told me she never exercises. Never been to a gym, doesn't do video workouts, nothing like that, but she's on her feet constantly. She works in her garden, takes her dog for walks twice a day, cleans her own house, walks to the store instead of driving when the weather's nice. She said she just never sits still for long. Another guy named Frank, 87 years old, he walks everywhere. He doesn't own a car anymore. He walks to get groceries, to visit friends, to go to appointments. He said some days he probably walks 5 or 6 miles without even thinking about it because it's just how he gets around. This was a common theme. The healthy seniors weren't necessarily the ones doing intense workouts. They were the ones who built movement into their daily lives naturally. They took stairs instead of elevators. They gardened. They cleaned their own homes. They went for walks because they enjoyed it, not because they felt like they had to. And honestly, this makes sense. Our bodies weren't designed to sit in chairs for 8 hours and then do an hour of intense exercise. They were designed to move consistently throughout the day. Light, regular movement seems to be better for long-term health than being sedentary most of the day and then trying to make up for it with a hard workout. The fourth thing that kept coming up was eating real food. But again, not in the way diet culture talks about it. Nobody mentioned counting calories. Nobody talked about cutting out entire food groups or following strict meal plans. What they talked about was eating food that looked like food. Vegetables, fruits, meat, fish, eggs, beans, rice, potatoes, bread. Real stuff. I talked to Maria. She's 84, and she said she's never been on a diet in her life. She just eats what her mother and grandmother taught her to eat. Lots of vegetables, some meat, not too much sugar. She cooks most of her meals at home. She said the only time she feels bad is when she eats too much processed stuff, like if she goes on a trip and eats out for several days straight. Another woman, Joyce, 88 years old, she told me she doesn't stress about food at all. She eats when she's hungry, stops when she's full. She loves butter and cream in her coffee and has a piece of chocolate most days, but she also eats a big salad with lunch and has fruit with breakfast. She said the secret is balance and not overthinking it. This was refreshing to hear because our culture is so obsessed with complicated diets and rules about food. But these people who've been healthy for 80 plus years, they keep it simple. Real food, reasonable portions, and they don't stress about it. The fifth thing I heard, and this one was mentioned by 31 people, was getting good sleep. Prioritizing it, protecting it, making it non-negotiable. I met George, he's 90, and he said he's been going to bed at 9 p.m. and waking up at 5 a.m. for the past 40 years. He doesn't stay up late for anything. Doesn't matter if there's a party or a TV show he wants to watch. Sleep comes first. He said when he was younger, he used to stay up late and run on 5 or 6 hours of sleep, and he was sick all the time, had no energy, felt miserable. Once he started prioritizing sleep, everything improved. Another woman, Ruth, she's 85, she has a whole nighttime routine. No screens after 8 p.m., a warm bath, reading in bed, same time every night. She said people think it's boring or too rigid, but she feels amazing because of it. She rarely gets sick, her mind is sharp, and she has energy all day.
Poor sleep is linked to basically every health problem you can think of. Heart disease, diabetes, obesity, dementia, depression, weakened immune system. But it's also one of the first things people sacrifice when life gets busy. These seniors who are thriving, they don't sacrifice it. They protect their sleep like it's the most important thing they do, because it is. The sixth thing that came up was staying curious and learning new things, keeping the mind active and engaged. I talked to William, he's 86, and he's currently learning Spanish using an app on his phone. He said his brain feels younger now than it did 10 years ago because he's challenging it. He also does crossword puzzles, reads constantly, and likes watching documentaries about topics he doesn't know much about. Another woman, Eleanor, 89, she took up piano lessons 3 years ago. She'd never played an instrument in her life. She said learning something completely new is hard and frustrating sometimes, but it's also exciting. It makes her feel alive. And she's noticed her memory is better since she started. This idea of keeping your brain active isn't just feel-good advice. Research shows that learning new skills, especially later in life, can actually help build new neural connections and protect against cognitive decline. People who challenge their brains regularly have lower rates of dementia. The seventh thing that I heard was managing stress and not sweating the small stuff. This came up in almost every conversation, just phrased in different ways. I met Thomas, 83, and he said the best decision he ever made for his health was learning to let things go. He used to be a worrier, stressed about everything, got angry easily. Then he had a health scare in his 60s, and it was a wake-up call. He realized all that stress was literally killing him. He started practicing deep breathing, going for walks when he felt wound up, and just choosing not to engage with things that weren't worth his energy. A woman named Betty, 87, she told me she has a rule. If it won't matter in 5 years, she doesn't spend more than 5 minutes upset about it. Flat tire? Frustrating, but fixable. Someone cut her off in traffic? Not worth raising her blood pressure over. She said life's too short to be angry and stressed all the time. Chronic stress wrecks your body. It raises blood pressure, increases inflammation, suppresses your immune system, disrupts your sleep, contributes to weight gain. The seniors who seemed the healthiest were the ones who'd figured out how not to let stress control them. The eighth thing was staying hydrated. This sounds basic, but 27 people specifically mentioned it as something important. I talked to Harold, 84, who said he used to have all kinds of problems. Joint pain, headaches, fatigue, constipation. His doctor ran tests but couldn't find anything wrong. Then a nurse asked him how much water he drank. He realized he barely drank any. He'd have coffee in the morning and maybe a glass of something with dinner. That was it. She told him to try drinking more water for a month and see what happened. He said within 2 weeks, most of his symptoms were gone. Now he drinks water throughout the day, keeps a bottle with him, and he feels completely different. A lot of older adults don't feel thirsty the same way younger people do, so they end up chronically dehydrated without realizing it. And dehydration causes so many problems that people attribute to just getting older. But it's not age. It's not drinking enough water. The ninth thing was getting outside and getting sunlight. This came up more than I expected. I met Carolyn, 82, and she said she makes a point to go outside for at least 30 minutes every single day, even in winter. She said it improves her mood, helps her sleep better, and she just feels healthier when she's getting fresh air and sunlight regularly. Another guy, Richard, 88, he sits on his porch every morning with his coffee and just enjoys being outside. He said it's his favorite part of the day. It helps him feel connected to the world, helps him start the day calm, and he swears it's part of why he stayed so healthy. Sunlight helps regulate your sleep-wake cycle, boosts your mood, gives you vitamin D, and just being in nature has been shown to lower stress and improve mental health. But a lot of people, especially as they get older, spend almost all their time indoors. The ones who made a point to get outside regularly seemed noticeably better off. The 10th thing, and this one came up in different ways but was underlying a lot of conversations, was having a positive attitude and sense of humor about life. I talked to Ethel, 90 years old, and she laughs constantly. She told me she's been through plenty of hard times, lost her husband, had health scares, struggled financially at times, but she said you can either laugh or cry, and laughing feels a lot better. She looks for humor in situations, doesn't take herself too seriously, and tries to find something to be grateful for every day. Another man, Albert, 85, he said getting old isn't for the weak, but complaining about it doesn't help. He'd rather focus on what he can still do instead of what he can't do anymore. He said staying positive isn't about ignoring problems, it's about choosing where to put your energy. Research shows that optimistic people live longer and have better health outcomes. They have stronger immune systems, lower rates of heart disease, and recover better from illness and surgery. Attitude matters more than most people realize. Now, there were other things that came up too. Some people mentioned staying at a healthy weight but not obsessing over it. Some talked about the importance of regular checkups and actually taking care of problems early instead of ignoring them. Some talked about staying mentally active by doing puzzles or reading. A few talked about having faith or spirituality as something that helped them through hard times. But those 10 things I mentioned were the patterns that stood out the most. Stay social, have a purpose, move throughout the day, eat real food, prioritize sleep, keep learning, manage stress, stay hydrated, get outside, keep a positive attitude. And here's what really struck me. None of these things are complicated. None of them require expensive equipment or supplements or special programs. They're simple, everyday choices that add up over time. We live in a culture that's always looking for the magic pill, the secret hack, the one weird trick. But the people who've actually lived long, healthy lives aren't doing anything weird or complicated. They're doing basic things consistently. The other thing that stood out was how interconnected everything is. The people who were social also tended to have a purpose because their relationships and activities gave them reasons to stay engaged. The people who moved regularly often did it through social activities or purposeful work like gardening. The people who managed stress well often did it through things like spending time with friends, being outside, or engaging in hobbies they loved. It's not about doing one thing perfectly. It's about building a life where healthy habits naturally support each other. And look, I'm not saying everyone who does these things will live to be 100. Genetics play a role. Luck plays a role. Bad things happen to good people who do everything right. But after talking to 100 people who've lived long, healthy lives, these patterns were undeniable. If you want to increase your odds of staying healthy and independent as you age, these are the things that actually seem to matter. Not trendy diets or expensive supplements or complicated workout programs, just simple, consistent habits that support your body, mind, and spirit over the long haul. So that's what I learned from asking 100 seniors their number one health tip. Social connection, purpose, movement, real food, sleep, learning, stress management, hydration, nature, positivity. Maybe pick one of those things to focus on this week. Not all of them at once, just one. See how it feels. Build from there. If this made you think differently about health and aging, hit that subscribe button for more content like this.